Hi folks, we're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about obviously the focus group talking points that are doing the rounds at the moment in the US, which asserts, well, we've got to take serious corrective action and give lots of compensation to black people because black people are 400 years behind. 400 years! This is emotional stuff. 400 fucking years behind white people. 400 years! So that is a shitload of compensation. Shitload. And only that compensation and corrective action will make things right. And you doubt that? You doubt that, motherfucker? Well, look at the difference in outcomes between black families and white families. Look at the difference. See, the outcomes are different. That just proves 400 years. So let's let's have a closer look at this. Now, one of the areas that are used, and they cherry pick even beyond this, one of the areas that are used to say the difference in outcomes for blacks and whites, difference in outcomes are pronounced is, say, in Chicago as an example, depending on whose numbers you look at, between 80 and 85% of black children are born to single mothers who have multiple children already from multiple different partners. So it's not unusual for a black single mother, there's some not even yet 30, to have 6 children from 6 different partners. And they're collecting a lot of welfare. Now, the outcomes aren't very good for children born or anybody involved in those sort of circumstances. Educational accomplishments are very low, and money is not spent wisely. Resources aren't kept with the view of having using them for tomorrow. Everything is instant gratification, and that's just how things are in those areas. Now, that's before you get to the drug gang gun battles, and in those areas, Chicago, where the black families live, there can be anywhere up to 50 shootings in a weekend, more than 150 shootings in a week. Many people dying from gunshot wounds or being severely injured, and that's how it is in those places. So you would anticipate outcomes wouldn't be that favourable given those conditions. I mean, 80 to 85% of children born to single mothers. I mean, that's insane. And those single mothers already having other children from casual liaisons. Now, given the amount of intimate partners these people have, they don't know who or not sure at least, who the biological procreating partner may have been. And even if they did know, the person doesn't have any, they're itinerant labourers at best, or they're working in the underground economy, drug dealing or something. And so they're not exactly like they're paying child support. And because the way child support works, when these black men, assuming they are ever identified and the DNA test is done, then they quickly conclude it's not worth their while ever working again. So they stay permanently in the underground economy, and which makes things worse for everybody concerned, I believe. So now let's look at white families by contrast. Now around 30% are born to single mothers of children, so less than half of the and that is probably an undesirable statistic, but for not all, but in many instances, it's a sort of a one-off party type liaison, and they got drunk and they were doing party drugs. They had a one-night stand, and she happened to get pregnant. Realised that her career job prospects are pretty ordinary. But he's actually doing all right. He's got a pretty decent job, the white guy that she was consorting with. And so she thinks, wow, I can keep this kid and and he has to pay me X amount of money because he's got a pretty high salary. Wow, that's as much money as I would make working at my shitty job in the retail store, if not more. And also I get a government handout, and I mean, wow. So you get that type of class of people, but there's more money to go around. So they live in a lower crime area, a better area, and they can go to a better school. So there's better outcomes for the kids there, unsurprisingly. Now, has any of this got to do with black people being behind? No, it's to do with the way that the black people are living, their lifestyle choices, the lifestyle that they're socialized into, and it's very, and by the way, the behavior of the black people in Chicago in the US today is very, very similar to the behavior of black people in Africa today. Black people in Africa who've never been anywhere near the United States or know anything about it. So when you look at the behavior of the African diaspora, whether it be in Britain, whether it be in Africa, whether it be in the United States or Canada, there's not a whole lot of difference. Now in Africa, it's quite common for this idea of the monogamous relationship is really a Western, property owning sort of type concept. Particularly so for things like inheriting the estate or inheriting the farm or the house, those sorts of things. So it's important for that. But in Africa, where there isn't that private ownership thing, or any society, it could be the Pacific Island society. It's in the sense of ownership, it's quite matrilineal because you can always tell that the child is the offspring of that woman, but you don't know who the procreating male is. And it could be, and it's quite common for, as in, Pacific Islander societies or African societies, quite common, quite accepted for a woman to have multiple sexual partners and have multiple children from those multiple partners. And given that inheritance, to whatever extent it exists, the grass hut or something, then that can be is handed down through the female line rather than the male line, whereas in the more capitalist property owning societies, it's handed down through the male line. So the behavior of the black people or black women in the United States, or men and women, as in multiple sexual partners, different, each child from a different male partner, that's not unusual. That's a very African way of living, and they're still doing it in the United States today. Does that really fit in very well with a capitalist property owning class? Probably not. It doesn't really fit in so well with that. And it also has attitudes to, if you're focused on conserving resources and making sure you maximize the opportunities for the children you have, such as maximizing their educational outcomes and optimizing other outcomes in terms of teaching them good manners, how to get on with people, how to, achieve things through a polite persuasion and reason, those type of things, then it's a very different sort of outlook on life and very different set of values you approach each day with. And so the difference in values between, in a classic sense, there are exceptions, of course, in white societies and the black sort of ghetto societies, for example, in Chicago or Baltimore in the US, then there's a very destructive way of living life, which is very unlikely to produce worthwhile outcomes, and certainly if measured in monetary terms, which they do, and to create this illusion of different outcomes. Black people are 400 years behind. And they say, well, it's all down to slavery. Well, no, it's not. The black people in Africa were living a Stone Age existence. So if anything, the black Americans are better off than they would be in most places in Africa. So that's bullshit. But it comes back to the lifestyle that American blacks are living is very close to and much more aligned to behavior of the black black sort of tribal societies in Africa today than it is white society. So even though they've been living among white people for 400 years, or certainly in quantity, say about 300 years or so, even though they've been living amongst white people at that time, watching white behaviour, working in white businesses, surrounded by white infrastructure, it's like they've learned nothing. It just all went over their heads, and they're still living as they would in an African tribal society, although with the benefits of what the whites have built and created around them. So until the Western political class stops, and black people, the existence of black people in white societies, whether they're imported recently or they've been there for a long time, the only benefit it offers the globalists is to create social dysfunction, social division, racial division, race hustling, race grifting. That's why they're there, and that's why these things go on. But the reality is that until the black diaspora stops behaves more like white people and less like the black tribes people, and remember, they've been out of Africa for many hundreds of years, but still behave the same way as they were, and as they did in Africa and do today in Africa. And so this idea of a 30-year-old woman with 5 or 6 children from 5 or 6 different men, liaisons, then that goes on in Africa today and is very, very widespread, and of course happens in the US. So, but no one seems prepared to come to grips with that, or to accept it or understand it and deal with the reality of that situation as it is. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.